Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just back in with another lesson on the sequence of the end times. And so this is one where it's encoded, and so this to me is, again, amazing. Finding these, and they're essentially like everywhere, in the Bible. And so I don't think I'll ever be able to find all of them. But I went to the Sermon on the Mount. I was just reading that this morning. And it's here, and this to me is, again, incredible how they always follow that same sequence, and then there's built-in numerology, into this. And so we learn quite a bit about, who God loves, in the characteristics from the Beatitudes, but then also it's consistent with the narrative of the end times, that I've been teaching for like a year and a half now. So the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 1-20, seeing the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. So there's always Christ, there's his disciples, and then there's the multitude. So even just that 5:1 gives us an explanation of God's right-hand side. There's Christ, who's the top of God's right-hand side. There's his disciples, his elect around him, and then there's the crowds, or the mixed multitude. It's described other way in other parts of the Bible. And so Matthew 5:1 in and of itself has the form of the sequence and this order and the structure on God's right-hand side. 5:2, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. That's in verse 6, because anything usually related to 6 or 666 or 666 are judgments, and those are plagues. And one of those plagues is a famine, in Revelation 16. So not a coincidence that hunger and thirst are being referenced in verse 6. Verse 7, Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure at heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And that's in verse 5:9 for 14. That's for God's elect. And so that's why he is using that specific language to in that particular location. Verse 10, Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And so right away from verse 5, 9, and 10, we have a reference to God's elect. And so that's always the first thing in the sequence. And then the next thing is a time where God sifts out the mixed multitude, and so just know that. And then we're going to get that here. Verse 11, Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. That's God's elect. All the prophets in all the Bible, all of them are God's elect, and obviously the disciples and all that. So just know that, and so this is also coded language for the sequence of the end times. And so after that, this group, who are persecuted and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account, after that group is taken out of the earth, then Christ returns, with his elect, and then the kingdom of heaven is established. And then we're going to get a reference to the kingdom of heaven next. And so just know that, and so that's the sequence, and then it holds here as well. So this to me is incredible. And so salt and the light, I'll go verse 13. You are salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. So there's other references in the Bible where when Christ returns, the elect are going to have their enemies below their feet, and then look at all my sequence videos, really, where it talks about Christ returning with his elect. And that's literal, where God's enemies are going to be below his feet in these so-called UFOs. He's not going to come to earth and fight, do hand-to-hand combat. Okay, it's going to be downwards. And so that's a reference right there where after God's right-hand side, the mixed multitude are taken out of the earth, then God will return, and then people will be trampled underneath their feet. Verse 15, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Now we're going to get references to the kingdom. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Verse 17, do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Verse 18, for truly I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until it is accomplished. That's in verse 18. In other parts of the Bible, it says that God will destroy people without labor of the law, and so let me get that verse. And, again, just know that the Bible is incredibly consistent. And I believe it's in Esdras. Yeah, Second Esdras 13:38. This is another of the many evidences that, the Apocrypha is part of the Bible. Okay, you have to understand Second Esdras, or else, first of all, you won't have enough insight and detail into why, or, prophesied that the earth is going to fight against God, because that's more explicitly detailed in Second Esdras. But it's alluded to, obviously, in just the Bible itself, in Revelation, that this entire earth fundamentally fights against foreign things. And then we see that literally being predictably programmed in the news. But Second Esdras is more like clear about it, and specific. And so Second Esdras 13:38, and shall lay before them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame. And he shall destroy them without labor by the law, which is like unto me. And so that's the exact same language that is written here, that during this time of destruction, 666:18, for truly I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes of the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So you can't be a hypocrite. You can't be a liar. You can't do any of those kind of things that they do, and then use the gospel for money. And then the list goes on. And so that's our reference to the kingdom of heaven, and then prior to the kingdom being described, it talks about, that not an iota, not a dot will pass from law until all is accomplished. And that's the same in Second Esdras 13:38. So again, this is not surprising for me at this point. This is just maybe to give people an extra little bit of comfort that we're living in those days, and then these words are going to come true, because only a certain group of people are going to understand this. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.